Welcome back to the deep dive. Go ahead and pull up a chair.
Or if you can find one.
If you can find one, settle into a Kennedy rocker. Pour yourself a glass of wine.
Maybe light a candle.
Or a cigarette, if we're being, historically accurate to the scene. We're trying to set a very specific vibe tonight. Think late night lounge. It's relaxed. It's domestic. But there's a twist.
There is a pretty significant twist. We're going for relaxed, definitely.
Okay.
But we're also aiming for unsettling.
Exactly. That's the word. Unsettling. We're going for that late night mood where the conversation starts to get really deep and maybe just a little bit spooky.
Right.
Because the things we're going to talk about tonight, even though they're said in a really calm voice, they're the kind of things that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up.
It's a real paradox, isn't it?
Okay.
The setting we're describing is so incredibly normal. It's a living room, a Wednesday night, there's wine, a husband and wife.
Totally mundane.
But the topic of conversation is this terrifying and also kind of liberating reality that your thoughts are right now, in this very second, physically sculpting your internal organs.
In real time.
In real time, yeah.
Yeah.
Not as a metaphor, literally.
So yeah, get comfortable, but maybe keep your eyes open. Today, we are conducting a deep dive into the Seth Material. Specifically, we're looking at session 159 of the early sessions, book 4.
And the date of record for this one is June 2, 1965.
A Wednesday night.
A Wednesday night, to be precise.
And before we get any deeper into, the mechanics of the soul, we have to give credit where it is absolutely due. This material comes to us from the Seth Material and is brought to us by the publisher New Awareness Network.
And it is. I mean, it's dense, it's fascinating, and frankly, it's life-changing stuff.
It really is. And look, our mission here is to sort of be your guides, to help pull the signal from the noise. But if you find yourself hooked by what we're unpacking today, and I have a feeling you will be, we really strongly encourage you to go straight to the source.
Oh, you have to.
You have to study the Seth Material books yourself. You can find them at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
There really is no substitute for reading the original sessions. We're kind of sketching the map here. But the books, that's the actual territory.
Totally agree. And just a quick disclaimer before we properly jump in. This deep dive is distributed completely free of charge on all the major platforms for educational purposes. We're here to explore the ideas, to look at the philosophy and the mechanics.
But we're definitely not here to prescribe medical advice.
Exactly. So with that, what's our mission tonight? What are we actually hunting for in this session?
Well, I think you put it well earlier. We're looking under the hood of the human psyche.
Yeah, we're going to explore what I like to call energy economics. How do we spend our psychic energy? How do we waste it? And, more importantly, what happens when the bill comes due?
And that bill almost always arrives in the form of a physical illness. We are going to unpack this really chilling reality of how physical symptoms are actually, in Seth's words, faithful replicas of mental distortions.
Oh, that phrase, faithful replica, it's going to stick with me. We're also going to talk about why a word like suggestion, the power of suggestion, hypnosis, that whole world, is actually way too weak to describe what's really happening inside your biology.
It's a section all about mechanics, the mechanics of the soul, and how they become the mechanics of the body.
All right, let's do it. Let's set the scene. Section 1, I'm calling this Smoke, Wine, and Open Eyes.
So it's June 2, 1965. It's 9 o'clock at night.
Now, normally when you think of channeling or, a deep trance state, you picture something very ceremonial.
Right, a dark room, incense, maybe some chanting, very occult.
But this is the complete opposite. It's aggressively domestic.
That's a great way to put it. Jane Roberts, who is the medium or the host for the entity Seth, she's actually recovering from a cold.
Yeah, the notes say she's coughing.
She's coughing, but she didn't want to cancel. And the visual is just, it's delightful. She is sitting in her Kennedy rocker.
The iconic chair.
And she's smoking a cigarette. She's sipping wine. And at the exact same time, she is channeling a multidimensional entity whose intellect is just off the charts.
It's just such a vibe. It's like, okay, I'm about to decode the secrets of the universe and matter formation, but hang on, let me just ash this cigarette and have a little sip of this Merlot. It's incredible.
And there's a specific shift in this particular session that makes it really unique. Seth actually mentions he wants to try an experiment.
The open eyes experiment.
Correct. So usually Jane's eyes are closed during these sessions. It helps with the dissociation, helps her ego step aside so Seth can come through clearly.
Right.
But in session 159, Seth decides to try something new. He says, and I'm quoting here, "I now and then enjoy sitting at a comfortable table with you with his eyes open."
He's referring to Jane as he, or Ruburt, which is her entity name.
Yes. And he says this is good training.
See, this is the part that I find genuinely spooky. I want you to really picture this. Imagine sitting across the table from your wife. It's late, it's quiet, and she's looking at you. Her eyes are open, they're dark and luminous. She's looking around the room. She reaches out, puts out a cigarette in the ashtray. She takes a sip of wine. But the person, the consciousness behind those eyes, it isn't her.
It completely blurs the line between the physical host and the energy personality. When the eyes are closed, you can almost pretend it's a recording, a broadcast. You can separate yourself from the strangeness of it.
Right, it's safer.
But when the eyes are open and they're looking at you and the voice is different, that's when the reality of the phenomenon must have really hit home for Rob Butts.
It forces you to acknowledge there's another intelligence in the room. It's not just Jane talking in her sleep. It's someone else literally driving the car.
Exactly. Seth is driving the biological vehicle, and Jane is, I don't know, in the back seat.
Or
maybe in the trunk for a bit.
But for all the spookiness, Seth is just so charming. He's not trying to be scary at all. He's actually being incredibly considerate.
He is. He opens the session with a joke. He says, "I was not certain after our last so lengthy session that I would be greeted with open arms this evening."
Because the last one was a marathon, he basically talked their ears off.
He knows it. And he specifically apologizes to Robert Butts Jane's husband, who Seth calls Joseph, for the typing chores.
You have to remember, there are no tape recorders here. Robert is writing every single word down in his own personal shorthand. It's intense physical labor.
And that, for me, just humanizes this entity so much. Here's this consciousness that's explaining the nature of reality that represents thousands of lifetimes, and he stops to say, "Hey, sorry about your poor fingers."
He literally promises to help Robert's poor fingers by keeping the session a little bit shorter. It just shows he's not a robot. He's not some cold, distant god. He gets human fatigue. He understands labor.
Which is good, because he's about to drop some really heavy knowledge on them.
Okay, let's move into that. Section 2, the case study.
The nervous man versus the efficient woman.
It sounds like a fable, or, I don't know, a personality test from a magazine.
In a lot of ways, it is. Seth spends a good chunk of this session analyzing two guests who had been at a previous session, a man and a woman.
And he uses them as practical examples of his theories.
Perfect examples. They're basically living case studies for his whole idea of energy economics.
Okay, let's start with the woman, the efficient one.
Seth describes her as having a large store of energy. But it's not just about the quantity. It's about how she uses it. He says she uses it with above-average efficiency.
Efficiency. That's such a clinical word for a spiritual context. You think of, like, gas mileage or a factory assembly line.
Right, but here I think efficiency means the absence of friction. She isn't leaking energy all over the place through emotional turmoil or psychological resistance.
So she's not fighting herself.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He says she has abilities she's even using yet, but the energy she is using, she's using well. She's a smooth engine. She's not driving with a parking brake on it.
Okay, so she's the control group. Now let's get to the man. Because I feel like a lot of us listening, and maybe me included, are going to relate to this guy a little too much.
The man is the total contrast. Seth says he is using his energies less effectively.
How so?
He consumes them in nervousness.
Ugh, I feel seen.
Seth gives this incredible description. He says that for this man to use his energy at all, he has to let it explode.
Explode, like a bomb goes off.
Like a burst, a sudden, uncontrolled release. He hasn't learned to conserve his energy or to stream it in a steady, controlled flow, so he bottles it up, holds it in, builds up all this pressure, and then boom, he forces it out in a burst of nervous activity.
That is the 0 to 100 personality type. The people who can't just do a little bit of work every day. They have to wait until the deadline is breathing down their neck, panic sets in, and then they just work for 24 hours straight in an absolute frenzy.
Precisely. Or it's the person who is really quiet and seems fine and then suddenly just blows up in anger over nothing.
Or lethargic, then manic. It's an all-or-nothing approach to energy.
It is. And the cost of that is, well, it's exhaustion. Seth specifically notes that this method leaves the man with little reserve.
You're energetically bankrupting yourself every single time you try to accomplish something.
And you're physically depleted because you're essentially setting off a stick of dynamite just to light a candle.
Wow, that's the perfect analogy. Setting off dynamite to light a candle. You're using this massive excessive force for mundane tasks because you don't know how to regulate the flow.
But Seth, being Seth, doesn't just criticize. He sees the potential. He says both of these people are basically constructive, creative. The goal isn't to change who the man is. He's not a bad person. It's the mechanism that's broken.
He just needs to adjust the nozzle.
Right. Turn that self-destructive, explosive energy into constructive channels. The energy itself is neutral. The same power that's creating a nervous breakdown could create a masterpiece, or a thriving business, or a healthy body, if you just change the delivery system.
But in this man's case, the delivery system is broken. And it's not just making him tired, it's making him physically sick.
And that leads us to the darker, more chilling part of this session.
Yeah.
Section 3, the anatomy of an illness.
The ulcer.
The ulcer.
The guest, the nervous man, has an ulcer. And Seth decides to give a diagnosis. But this isn't a medical diagnosis. He's not talking about stomach acid or H. pylori bacteria or anything like that.
No, not at all. He's talking about architecture, mental architecture.
This is the quote that it stopped me in my tracks. I want to read this slowly because if you get this one sentence, you get the whole deep dive. Seth says, "The problem, as a mental manipulation, has not been settled. The resulting construction, therefore, is a faithful replica of this distortion."
A faithful replica.
It's just chilling.
It's the core aha moment of the entire session. I mean, probably of the entire book, to be honest. Seth is saying that the ulcer is the psychological problem. It is not a side effect. It is not a punishment from God. It is the problem itself, just translated from the language of thought into the language of flesh.
It's like 3D printing of fear.
That's a perfect way to put it. The mind has a distortion, a knot, a conflict, an unresolved fear that it cannot solve or maybe just refuses to face. It's a mental manipulation that hasn't been settled.
So that energy gets stuck.
And energy can't be destroyed, right? It has to go somewhere. So the psyche, in a way, pushes that distortion outward into the physical world. It prints it, it constructs it using your own cells and tissues, and the result is the ulcer.
So the body's acting like a pressure valve, or maybe a billboard.
I think it's a map. It's a physical, biological map of a mental dead end. The ulcer is a faithful replica of that twisted thought. The shape of the illness literally matches the shape of the psychological distress.
That just completely changes how you look at any symptom. If I get a pain in my stomach, my first thought is, oh, I ate something bad, or I'm just stressed from work.
Of course.
But Seth is saying, no, that pain, that physical sensation, is a sculpture. It's a sculpture made of a thought you are actively avoiding.
It's your body trying to show you, in a very literal way, what your mind is doing behind the scenes.
And this brings us to what he calls the vicious circle. This is why these things are so damn hard to cure. Because once the ulcer exists, you have a brand new problem to focus on.
Right. It's a trap. Walk us through it.
Okay, so step 1. A mental problem arises. The ego decides, for whatever reason, that it's too painful or too difficult to solve, so it avoids it, shoves it down.
Classic repression. The go-to move.
Step 2. That blocked, distorted energy manifests as a physical illness, in this case, the ulcer. And then step 3, and this is the absolute kicker, the sufferer focuses all their attention on the illness.
Well, of course they do. It hurts. It's real. It's uncomfortable. It might be bleeding.
It's totally natural. But Seth says this focus is the trap. The sufferer becomes, he says, entranced with the illness. They worry about the ulcer. They talk about their ulcer. They identify with the ulcer.
It becomes my ulcer, my bad back, my chronic migraines.
Exactly. And by focusing so intensely on the symptom, they are literally feeding it with more energy. They're reinforcing the construction. But even more insidiously, as long as they are fussing over the ulcer, they don't have to look at the original psychological problem that caused it in the first place.
Wow. Okay, so the illness is a distraction.
It's a defense mechanism, a very effective one. Seth defines illness as a failure to solve a mental or psychological problem in the correct manner. It's an avoidance strategy. The ulcer is awful, yes, but to the subconscious mind, the ulcer is safer than facing the terrifying truth.
That is just so heavy. It means that getting sick can actually be a way of protecting yourself from a reality you're not ready to handle. I can't possibly deal with my failing marriage right now because, you see, I'm too busy dealing with this ulcer.
Precisely. It provides a socially acceptable, valid excuse to disengage from the real, terrifying problem.
And that must be why Seth says, the purpose the illness serves has to be understood. If the illness is still serving a purpose, if it's still protecting you from something, then no amount of medicine is going to cure it permanently.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, the cure, or more accurately, why medicine isn't enough.
Seth is very, very blunt here. He says a cure never depends on the treatment itself.
Never. That's a huge statement. A doctor would not like hearing that.
He says never. It depends entirely on the sufferer's belief that they can be cured, and maybe even more importantly, their desire to be cured.
That sounds like the placebo effect, but, on steroids.
It's the fundamental mechanism behind the placebo effect, yes. But Seth would argue it's the mechanism behind all healing. Drugs, surgery, physical therapy, they're just props. They're rituals. Rituals that help us give ourselves permission to heal. They convince the ego that it's okay to let go of the symptom now. But the actual healing that comes from the mobilization of our own inner energy.
Okay, so what's the program? If pills aren't the real answer, what does Seth tell this guy to do about his ulcer?
It's not a quick fix. He doesn't say, go take this herb or chant this mantra. He suggests a disciplined program of self-understanding.
That sounds like work. That sounds a lot like homework.
It is work. It involves slowly, methodically changing the focus of your attention away from the symptom. You have to stop feeding the beast.
But how do you just ignore an ulcer? It's right there, hurting.
You don't ignore it. That's resistance, which is just more energy. You acknowledge it, but you stop obsessing over it. You stop identifying with it.
Yeah.
And you start digging. You start looking for the mental manipulation that hasn't been settled. You have to ask the hard question, what am I not facing?
And this brings us to a really interesting semantic point Seth makes. He takes issue with the word suggestion.
Yes. In the 60s, auto-suggestion was a big deal. But the whole Emile 2A thing, every day in every way, I am getting better and better. Hypnosis, affirmations.
But Seth doesn't like the word.
He calls it a poor term.
Why? What's wrong with it?
He thinks it's too weak. It's too flimsy. Suggestion sounds like a whisper. It sounds like something you can take or leave. I suggest you get better. It implies there's an option to not get better.
It lacks authority. It lacks punch.
So Seth proposes a better term. Expectation.
Expectation.
Yeah.
That feels different.
It's completely different. Expectation is a command code for reality. It's not, I hope this happens. It is, this is what is happening now. Seth says your expectation is what determines how your energy is used to construct your physical matter.
He uses that really weird but cool example here. He talks about nature.
The toad and leaf comparison. I love this part.
Me too. He says, suggestion operates as strongly and as realistically within an atom or a toad or a leaf as it does in man.
It's such a brilliant image. We tend to think of mind over matter or manifestation as this super high-level, sophisticated human consciousness thing.
Right, something only we can do.
But Seth is saying, no, this is physics. This is basic biology. An atom expects to hold its structure. A leaf expects to turn towards the sun. A toad expects to catch the fly with its tongue.
It's a universal law of construction.
It is. Expectation is the blueprint that raw energy flows into and fills. The toad doesn't doubt its ability. The leaf doesn't have an identity crisis about photosynthesis. They just expect. And so reality conforms.
But we humans, we doubt all the time.
We doubt. We suggest we might get better. But deep down, we expect to stay sick. If you wake up every single morning and the first thing you do is check your stomach to see if it still hurts, you are sending a fresh blueprint to your cells that says, build more ulcer today, please.
And your cells are just these obedient little construction workers. They look at the blueprint from the main office and say, okay, boss wants more inflammation today. Get the bricks. Let's keep building this thing.
Exactly. The body is always faithful. That's the chilling part we talked about at the beginning. Your body is so incredibly loyal. It will loyally and faithfully build whatever nightmare you consistently expect it to.
So the only way to heal is to change the blueprint?
You have to change the expectation. You have to start expecting health with the same calm certainty that a toad expects to catch a fly.
That is a high bar for a human.
It is. But he's saying it's the only way to fundamentally change the construction.
Okay, let's move to the last piece of this. Section 5. Practical magic, because Seth gets into the specific history of this guy, and it's pretty dramatic. It turns out this is not a new problem for this particular consciousness.
It isn't all. Seth reveals that the guest has a history, and he means in past existences, of hitting out at the organs of the various physical bodies.
Whoa. So in previous lives, he was literally doing the same thing, attacking himself from the inside.
Yes. Seth makes a contrast. He says some personalities turn destructiveness outward. They become violent, they hit other people, they start fights, they go to war. This personality type is different. He turns that aggressive energy inward.
It's the ultimate passive-aggressive move. He's literally attacking himself.
He's beating himself up. Literally. Yeah. The ulcer is a physical blow. It is a punch to the gut delivered by his own mind. Yeah. He is both the abuser and the victim, trapped in the same body.
So what's the action plan? I mean, how does he stop punching himself? If he's been doing this for lifetimes, that is a deep, deep groove to get out of.
Seth gives him a very practical, very intellectual assignment. He doesn't tell him to go meditate on a mountain or do a vision quest. He tells the guest to read.
Read what? Self-help book?
Oh, no. He tells him to read the Seth Material itself, specifically the parts on how physical matter is formed from consciousness.
Why? How is a physics lesson going to help an ulcer?
Because of responsibility. This is the absolute core of the Seth philosophy.
Mm.
If you believe your illness is just bad luck or a random virus or faulty genetics or God's will,
Yeah.
then you are a victim. You are powerless.
You're just sitting around waiting for a doctor to save you. You're a bystander in your own life, your own body.
Right, but if you understand the mechanics, if you truly grasp that you built the ulcer, that your energy, guided by your expectation, constructed it atom by atom.
Then you can also deconstruct it.
Precisely. It moves the locus of control from outside to inside. It shifts the narrative from bad luck to bad architecture. And if you are the architect, you can always order a renovation.
That's terrifying, but it's also incredibly empowering.
It's the ultimate empowerment. It's not a miracle cure. It's a project. It's a construction project. It's saying, okay, I built this mess. Now I'm going to get my tools and I'm going to clean it up.
I love that. It takes the spooky mystery out of it. It's just work.
Hard work. But it's possible. Work.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's try and summarize the big takeaways. Because we've covered a lot of ground here. We've gone from smoking in a rocking chair all the way to the physics of toads.
Let's boil it down. Takeaway number 1, energy usage. Don't be the man who explodes. Don't run on panic mode. Learn to stream your energy efficiently, like the woman. Don't burn your whole house down just to light one candle.
Takeaway number 2, the faithful replica. Your body is a mirror. It's a 3D printer for your mind. If you have a persistent physical symptom, stop treating it like a foreign enemy and start treating it like a message. It is a faithful replica of a thought you are avoiding.
And takeaway number 3, the cure. You have to shift your focus. Stop feeding the symptom with your constant attention. Break that vicious circle. And, most importantly, replace suggestion, that weak, flimsy, whispery wish, with powerful, undeniable expectation. Command your reality with the certainty of a toad or a leaf.
I never thought I'd be taking life advice from a toad, but here we are.
That's good advice. Nature doesn't doubt itself into sickness.
And finally, let's just touch on the human element at the end. The session ends and Jane just kind of snaps back.
Yeah, she didn't even realize she had closed her eyes at the very end. She's a bit disoriented. But Seth, right before he leaves, gives her this little piece of gentle encouragement about her own creative work, her painting.
He says, your painting will now spur you on.
It's just a lovely reminder that despite all this heavy talk about ulcers and mental distortions and vicious circles, the ultimate goal of all of this, of the Seth Material, of life itself, is creativity. It's about creating value, creating art, creating health.
It's a supportive universe in the end, if we can just learn how to work with it instead of against it.
Indeed.
All right, that brings us to the end of our time in the Kennedy Rocker. I hope you enjoyed this late night session.
And just a reminder to everyone listening, this was a deep dive into session 159.
If you want to go deeper, and you really, really should, go buy the books. Go to sethcenter.com/the early sessions. Support the New Awareness Network. They are the ones keeping this incredible material alive and available for all of us.
And remember, knowledge is only potential power. It only becomes real power when you apply it.
So here is a final provocative thought for you to take with you into the night. We talked about the man's ulcer being a faithful replica of a thought he was avoiding.
A physical map of a mental secret.
Exactly. So what conversation are your knees trying to have with you right now? What is that chronic tension in your stomach trying to say? What is your back screaming at you when you're not paying attention?
If your body is talking, are you brave enough to actually listen to what it's saying?
Or are you just trying to shut it up? Think about that. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Good evening.